down. How many people do you know that have lived their entire life, raised good children, etc., and are now downsizing later on in their life?
Oh, everyone's
You should be
parents.
upsizing. You should be upsizing in the later part of your life because that's the celebration of your life. You should be upsizing, making space for more grandchildren, etc., etc. That's what people should be doing, but they're not because the fiat system incentivizes people to shrivel up and die, and that's what Bitcoin fights against.
Wow. Totally
I
agree.
feel like life is a journey of turning arrogance into confidence, right? In a weird way.
Oh,
Like that's what life is
applause.
about. Like life is about believing in yourself and what God put you on this earth for and then spending your life proving that. That's what life is about.
Well, hello, humans. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Be You Get Paid podcast. I'm your host, Amy Taylor, and I have one goal by being in your ears: to explore as many conversations and perspectives as possible on stuff we did not learn in school. You know, stuff that would have actually helped a lot more of us thrive rather than just survive as grown-ups in an often challenging and ever-changing world. As the title might suggest, this includes anything involved with knowing ourselves, understanding money, and generally anything that might offer some insight into how we can all be happier humans. With that in mind, wherever you're listening, you'll find links to some of the best resources I have personally found to help with all of those things. Sometimes I'll talk about these in a bit more detail, and I want you to know I will only ever recommend products, services, and companies that I am a customer or user of myself. Now, we're all grown-ups here, and as such, you'll possibly hear the occasional use of grown-up language. More importantly, anything discussed here is personal opinion and intended for conversational and educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial or investment advice. That's the housekeeping done. Let's get into what I hope is some helpful chat. This is probably the most unprepped I've been for a conversation with anyone because I don't know anything
Good.
about you. No, I know. And then you said to me, I'm just going to read your tweet quickly. What did you say when I tweeted for guests? This could be fun as long as you promise not to tell me what you'll ask and make what you ask as uncomfortable as possible, however as beneficial and funny as possible for the audience. And I said that's right up my street. So yeah, I don't know a lot about you. Do I call you British?
You can call me British, you can call me British Hodl, you can call me the Bitcoiner, you can call me mate, you can call me whatever you want to call me.
It's that cigar smoke I see too.
That is, yeah.
I love
You have
that.
to
And
light up the cigar.
there's a lesson right there in personal branding for anyone listening. I know if I know nothing else about you, I know that cigars have become part of your brand.
It's
Which I
cigars.
think is very
I've been
cool.
smoking cigars since I was 18 years old. Cigars were the one because I don't drink anymore. I never used to be a big drinker anyway. I know that's going to be offensive to you from the part of the world that you're from and the shirt you're wearing.
Not at all.
Everyone in the UK tells me that I'm not being a proper Brit by not drinking. So, yeah, no, I started smoking cigars when I was 18 years old. It was the one thing that allowed me to actually form connections on a different level. Like that's what it was for me.
What kind of
Yeah, my
connections?
very
Interesting.
the best
What?
connections. I was sharing an office with a friend of mine, and we were sharing offices for 2 years, and we had never had an in-depth conversation about life. And
Wow.
one day, a cigar lounge opened up in Canary Wharf in London, and he said, "Hey, this cigar lounge opened up. You want to go smoke a cigar? Have you ever smoked a cigar?" I was 18 years old, and I was like, "No, I've never done that, but it looks cool in the movie, so let's go smoke a cigar." And I smoked my first cigar. It was a Cuban Monte Cristo Regatta, and me and him.
That sounds fancy.
Bear in mind, we sat next to each other for 2 years, right? And we didn't know anything about each other. And in that 2 hour window, we had the most in-depth conversation about life. And then the week after that, my best friend and I went to smoke a cigar, and we've been smoking together ever since. And for me, it is this moment to connect, whether it's with someone else or myself or the universe. Like it's just the moment to connect. So I've been a cigar fan now for a very, very long time.
I love that our conversation has started that way. And you know what? I'm learning more and more that sometimes less preparation for these conversations is better because that's such a perfect example. Look at you. I love it. Anyone who's listening I'll make sure we put some clips on social media so they can see your cigars. But that's such that's such a lesson in something I sort of coach and speak to people about all the time with marketing and branding. Like any part of you that you might think, oh, I won't make that part of my brand, or I won't smoke on camera, or I won't, let everyone know that I smoke cigars, or that story. It's the perfect example. It's like the most random part of you that you think you shouldn't share or might not share or isn't relevant or isn't interesting caused you to have, like you say, a meaningful conversation with someone that you've been sat next to for 2 years.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it's life is full of individuals at the end of the day, and that's another beautiful thing about Bitcoin, right? Like whoever you are, you can come to Bitcoin and bring yourself, and you can still add value, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's beautiful about. I do want to clarify because I like drinking tea out of a shot glass, so I don't want anyone to think he just said he's not drinking alcohol and now he's drinking vodka. Like, just want to make sure it's tea.
It's another random tea out of a shot glass. There's a title for a video that will get some intrigue. Cool. I'm really glad we started that way. Tell me where you are. That backdrop looks, I'm going to guess, somewhere in Latin America.
Yeah, I spend time in several different places throughout the year, but currently I'm in Medellin, Colombia.
Okay. Oh, good guess. Yes, it looked like a kind of, the landscape looked like it would be somewhere like that. Okay, well, let's rewind a bit. So I discovered you, I think the first time I stumbled across you was on a Twitter space, which for anyone who's not on Twitter is basically just like a audio chat room, I guess, isn't it? Like a webinar kind of thing, but just audio only. And it was introduced probably sometime last year or year before.
Yeah, I think it was like 2021.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I really started connecting with people on Clubhouse. I don't know whether you were on Clubhouse or not.
Oh, very briefly, but only personal intrigue. It wasn't something I was using for work. But I remember I essentially ended up on Twitter because of Bitcoin. It seemed to be where a lot of the conversation happened and a lot of the big names and influencers were. And I jumped on this Twitter space once and I was like, oh, you can literally just put your hand up and speak. Fantastic. This is so much more interactive and up my street than, typing or messaging and all the comments and trolling. And it seemed to have a lot more depth. So found you. Then we connected, and you've got quite a big following. So let's rewind and like your British Hodl, for anyone who's not a Bitcoiner, it's hold on for dear life, isn't it? The roller coaster that is riding Bitcoin price volatility for those who care about the price. So you're in Colombia now. Let's go right back. Like, what's your career background? Where are you from? Because you've got a bit of a twang to your accent. I'm assuming you've spent time in lots of places, but take us back to what you do, what you did, how you found Bitcoin. Let's just move through that structure.
So I thought Bitcoin was a scam until 2020, right? We'll start.
Okay.
I thought it was a complete and utter scam, and that's because my background is in real estate, and my background's in equities, and my background's in gold, traditional assets. I started negotiating property deals alongside my father when I was 16 years old in London, and helping people sort of navigate. Like, they had an investors club, so to say, and they would basically, different members of the club would go and negotiate deals, bring them to the club, everyone would take a piece, and that's how they were growing their portfolios. And I, at 15 and a half years old, was listening to my dad negotiate a property deal on the phone, and with a slight level of confidence, in truth it was arrogance at that point, turned to my dad after he got off the phone and said, "That looks easy." And the biggest blessing that I got in that moment was he didn't tell me to, can I swear on this podcast?
Of course you can. I just lost you briefly, but I think by the time it's finished, you'll be in sync. I just lost you. The biggest lesson you got was...
Right. The biggest lesson I got was he didn't tell me to get fucked when I said that looks easy. Right? He told me, if it's that easy, prove it. And so now I had to take my arrogance and actually prove it. And I had that sinking moment when you're like, oh, shit, I think my mouth has just written a check bigger than I can cash at 15-something years old.
I have no idea how much I love that, though.
Yeah, and then I had to go and do it. I had to go and do it. So I started reading books on real estate. I started learning what a mortgage broker was at 15, 16 years old. I started learning what a lawyer was. I started learning all these things. And then I remember, my first phone call with a property developer. And it was terrifying. I was sweating at the end of it. It was awful. But then very quickly, I learned that I had a superpower that nobody else did in that investors club, which was I'm 16 years old, and on the phone you can't tell whether I'm 16 or 48, right? Like I can put on whatever I want to put on, and I can walk away from the deal because worst case scenario, I've got to go to school. I'm going to school anyway. So whether you give me this deal or not, I'm going to school. There's no way around that, right? So I had the ability to walk away from deals that other people didn't, and therefore I would get the best deal very quickly.
Right.
And then from that, went on to helping him, and working with him to sell these deals to different investors, growing that, and then transitioning a little bit to equities, and then transitioning to gold after the GFC. And then realizing that, I was completely lied to, and realizing that my perceptions on Bitcoin being a scam were completely wrong in 2020 during the pandemic.
So I missed a little bit of what you said just then, up to the GFC. So did you basically continue working with your dad in real estate and just doing property development type deals?
So we weren't doing property development. I hated property development because I was 16 years old. I couldn't empathize with someone that was in a tough moment where they had to sell their property. I couldn't get emotional enough to secure that deal, right? I was just walking in looking at numbers. So for me, finding my path to success was looking for the new build developments that just weren't selling for whatever reason, and walking in and saying, right, you've got a development of 50 units, you've got 20 left, we'll take all 20 and close within 45 days as long as you can give us X amount of discount.
Oh, okay, so getting undervalued,
that was my world.
Going into undervalued assets. Okay. I remember that I relate to that somewhat, certainly not at 16, but I remember when I first left uni and then had one or two jobs, and remember going to a property investment workshop that I think I saw on the train in the Metro newspaper. And it was just like one corner back in the days when we had newspapers and you'd get to work with your hands all grubby. And it was like £400 to go to this workshop. And I went, and it was, I've
run a few of those.
I can imagine you have, yeah. And it was my first exposure to people talking about the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I subsequently read and changed my life. But I remember that workshop just being like, you can buy a whole house for like less than £50,000, and how do I get my hands on money? It was the only thing that made me want to get a job, because that would enable me to get a mortgage. And then I subsequently later on bought investment property. So I totally understand what you're talking about. But being in a position at 16 to be talking about that kind of money, like that's setting you up for life in a way that I can't imagine many teenagers do.
I mean, it was hard work, but I was lucky, right? Like I said, I was already lucky that my dad had enough belief in me to not tell me to get fucked. That was the number one blessing, I would say, in my business career. But for us, it was even more. It was even more. It was even
the proof of work treatment.
It was actually even more exciting because in the UK, what you could do is you could do what's called an instant remortgage on the day of completion, which means that I could go buy a property that was, say, £100,000, get a valuation on it at £100,000, pay 80 for it because they couldn't sell it, and then on the day of completion, refi at 95%. So now I've just paid 80K for this property, and now I've got back 95K from
You've made
15K
on the day.
So I've got 15K at 0% interest for nothing. So I guess for me, the thing that was, because a lot of real estate investors get very, very focused on property. And I think for me, when I saw that moment, I was like, this is not the real estate game. We are not playing the real estate game here. This is a credit game. And then everything just became about credit for me at such a young age.
Yeah. That's exactly right, and I think that's the biggest thing I took away from that property workshop. I think, you know, they took huge amounts of money off people to be in their mentorship program for months and years on end, and I think they even, from memory, I might have used them to help me finance one of my purchases, because all they needed was someone that could take on a mortgage. And you're right, it was the person on the other end of the transaction was definitely a distressed homeowner, which didn't feel good, but I didn't have to deal with them directly. And then I just kind of told myself, well, they're distressed. They need to be out of their mortgage. So it wasn't completely a bad feeling around it, but it definitely felt, in hindsight, it definitely felt like one of those zero-sum games where someone has to lose for someone to have to win. But one thing it did open my eyes to was the creativity of how they would structure this money, and that it was perfectly doable and supposedly perfectly legal, and it was, but it was, I guess what I'm getting at here is just, it all comes down to how you think. Like, we are so conditioned, the average person is so conditioned to property being get a job, get a mortgage, buy your house. It's only those that kind of want to do better or make more money that start to think differently, and that's just the key piece in everything. It's just, you've got to change your mindset around these things, and Bitcoin's no different, right?
Absolutely. Like, I think once you get to a certain point, you just realize if everyone's doing something, it's probably the wrong thing.
There you go.
It's just very simple, and that's helped me a lot through my entire investing career, not just Bitcoin, not through anything else. You know, I was lucky. Like, there's a lot of Bitcoiners who are very, very prominent, and I you know, bow down to them for being able to stick through the volatility of the really early stages of the market. That wasn't my story. I come from, you know, a background where I had success behind me before I discovered Bitcoin. Bitcoin is probably my second major wealth accumulation step. Most people only get one, and it's mostly real estate based on the data that we see. If you're in the real top 0.1%, it's mainly equities. If you're in anything between the top 0.1% and the bottom 50%, it's mainly real estate. And so, yeah, like, most people only get one step to building real wealth, and I'm blessed because I'm on my second at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it is about mindset. It's about mindset. It's about, how do you change? Can you let go of something that meant so much to you, that saved you from a place where you were struggling, you were trying to find answers, and this thing came along and gave you the opportunity that you thought it was? Can you receive new information to allow you to see that while it might have worked for the last 35, 40 years, it's not going to work for the next 35 or 40 years? That's the key differential factor between people who stay rich and people who make it once.
Now, are you someone who has swallowed the orange pill and going big on Bitcoin? If you are considering putting an amount of money into this world-changing asset and are feeling like you won't sleep at night without a little one-on-one guidance, you are in the right place. Look no further than the incredible team of amazing humans at the Bitcoin Advisor, who I've had the pleasure of meeting in person a few times now. Entrusted with managing over $1 billion, that's a B, not an M, $1 billion in assets they've been responsible for. The team at the Bitcoin Advisor have been serving clients since 2016 with buying, securing, very, very important. If you don't know what that means, you definitely need their help. Buying, securing, and or managing your Bitcoin on a bigger scale, particularly if you have family who don't know what to do in the event that you very sadly get hit by a bus. You need these guys' help, trust me. I will admit, understanding Bitcoin from scratch is not easy. It is overwhelming, and you'll be shortcutting hours of reading and learning and podcasts and articles and all the things if you try and do all this yourself, especially if you try and do it in a hurry when the price starts taking off and the FOMO kicks in. I keep saying that because it's true. You're human. It will. So book in a chat with these guys before that happens. Tell Peter and Andy that I sent you, and they will take extra special care of you. So just head over to bugetpaid.com/BTC advice. That's bugetpaid.com BTC ADVICE bugetpaid.com/BTC advice. Hope that makes sense. This will be in the show notes. Bang on. Yeah, totally agree. When you say that, and sort of, I guess, layering on top of what you just said before about people only get one step to wealth or one way, especially if you're referring to the middle class, are you referring to the fact that most people's wealth is their home, i.e. real estate?
Yeah, what I meant is people get one opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Like for real wealth. Like I make money in all kinds of silly things, right? But what the real wealth, like where you 20x your net worth, like those moments, most people are only going to get one of those, and people are so conditioned to making it property, and it's awful. You know, like right now, I just read the study. You know, if you want to buy a house in Toronto right now, you need to save for 25 years. If you're earning 250,000 Canadian dollars a year, you need to save for 25 years for the down payment, not the full property, for the down payment. It's insanity.
And that's based on the price the price of that house today, which it will
today,
not be
exactly.
in 25 years.
And it's not based on the Canadian government's willingness to devalue that money over the next 25 years too.
Yeah, but you're right, and I think that's why I think once you're down the rabbit hole, as we proverbially call it with Bitcoin, but you don't even have to be down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. It's just maths. It's just thinking differently and being open to new information. And the conversation I find myself having with people to encourage them to get, start earning their money differently, where they can catch up, it is just, you have to think differently because people want it. Everyone's looking for a way to do better. I fundamentally believe that people want to do better, but then it's funny how the minute they find it, whether it's a business opportunity, or in my space it's learning to earn money on the internet or build a business. In your space it may have been real estate, but the minute they find it, they then find everything about it that's wrong or scammy, and Bitcoin's the same. Well, then how could it fix this? And it's like, well, hang on a minute. Like, you came here asking the original question for a reason, because something in your life or your life in general isn't working, like the saving for a deposit, for example. Well, we got this far and we were about to put the down payment down, and now everything's gone up 20% like it did in COVID. What do you find people, do you deal with high net worth individuals coming to you about Bitcoin? Is that your market? Or
I don't know why I decided to become British Hodl, right? It just sort of happened. It was one thing after the other. When I first came into the Bitcoin space, I just went on to Psycho Bitcoin Twitter, and was looking around, and I started talking to this guy, American Hodl. I'm sure you've heard of him, right?
Yeah.
And I started talking to him, connected on Clubhouse, talked to him even more. And I was like, well, if that guy's American Hodl, I think I'm British Hodl. After I went through the development process of understanding what Bitcoin was. And that's really how it came about. Why I decided to do YouTube videos and things was one moment in my life. And that was realizing that people like my parents, who immigrated to the United Kingdom, spent 35 to 40 years building a property portfolio because they believed it was the right thing to do. Right?
Where did they move from? Sorry to interrupt you.
My dad's from Africa, from Uganda and Kenya, but with a background in Uganda and Kenya, and my mom's from India.
Wow.
And so they moved to the UK, built a background, built a property portfolio over a 35 to 40 year window, thinking that it's the absolute right thing to do. Why? For their children, because they want their children to have a good future. Sacrifice day in, day out with all the stress that's involved in building that, only to have the value of their property portfolio be 80% shy of what it should be in order to account for all the pounds that have been printed. That's why I decided to launch a YouTube channel, nothing else. That is my audience. My audience is rich people, but it's the rich people that don't believe they're rich, right? It's the millionaire next door. It's the someone who's got $1 to $10 million net worth, who doesn't understand that their wealth is being printed from their wealth is being debased from underneath them, even if they're doing the right thing. That's the most insulting part. You're doing the right thing, taking the advice that you're given, and you're still getting fucked. That is who my content is for. And I always say this: I think rich people need Bitcoin more than poor people. And I think poor people need Bitcoin adoption more than rich people.
I agree. Just to rewind quickly, when you mentioned, those with a net worth of 1 to 10 million, that's something that I think not enough people, again, open their mind enough to consider that they are in that bracket. Like most of my friends, I'm 40, millennials, most of my friends own their own home. And that's just conditioning. There's nothing. And if it's your life goal and you want a house in the same place, or, a home for your children, everyone's got different goals. What I struggle with is that I don't think anyone's actually sat and consciously thought about that being the goal, or if it's just a goal they've inherited from their parents and they're thinking, a bit like what you've just described. And the average person in the middle class probably does fall, or a couple, let's assume it's a dual income household, they probably do fall into a net worth of 1 million to 10 million if they've bought a house 15, 20 years ago and have been paying it off ever since.
Yep.
So, that I just wanted to clarify that the numbers, because it's the numbers part that most people just don't sit down and crunch to a point of realizing how much they're going to need this, because the majority of their work to date, or the majority of their working life to date, has been spent primarily paying off a mortgage that isn't going away. Yes, okay, the capital gain might be there, but that's irrelevant if you're living in the house. It's not going to change the way you live your life if you've still got this mortgage to pay off.
What are you going to do? Sell a bedroom to live? Like you can't. That's the problem with property. You can't just sell a bedroom when you need some cash. You need to actually go refi the whole thing, or you need to go sell the whole thing and scale down. How many people do you know that have lived their entire life, raised good children, et cetera, and are now downsizing later on in their life?
Oh, everyone's
You should
parents.
be upsizing. You should be upsizing in the later part of your life, because that's the celebration of your life. You should be upsizing, making space for more grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. That's what people should be doing, but they're not, because the fiat system incentivizes people to shrivel up and die, and that's what Bitcoin fights against.
Wow, totally agree. I mean, the downsizing argument, I guess the average person, my mum being one and my partner's parents the same, the argument for that would be, well, there's only us. And mobility wise, like I've said to my mum several times, just stay in an apartment. You don't need much space. It's more to clean. But realistically, if the system was to enjoy the fruits of your labor when you retire, get a bloody cleaner.
Right.
If your money had held its value and you'd accumulated and you'd built businesses, or you'd built income streams, or you'd invested and, like you said, done everything right, then you should have the income at that point, if you've done everything right, tick box, to afford to be looked after. And like you say,
Exactly.
The meaning of life of having your grandchildren, that's huge one. I'd never thought of it that way, but that's a really good point. Not necessarily upsizing your house, but upsizing your life, your happiness,
Right.
the richness of your life, because you now have grandchildren,
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what people should be focused on. But you're not, because the fiat, everything is downstream of the money, right?
Yeah.
That's something American Hodl said once, which stayed in my mind. Everything is downstream of the money. And when you understand that the system itself is designed to create incentives for you to shrivel up and die, you have to realize that you have to fight against that. The problem is, here's the issue. People have been fighting against that, and they've been sold the wrong path.
Yeah.
That's what's heartbreaking. Like, you mean to tell me you did everything right and you still get screwed? Not only by your taxes. So hold on, you got to go and exchange your energy for currency, right? That's what people do when they go work. They go and exchange their energy, and they get back a representation of that energy, which is, pounds, dollars, euros, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's you get back that currency. You then take that currency and realize, I'm not one of the stupid ones, so I'm not going to go and splurge out on pointless holidays and Louis Vuitton bags. I'm going to go and put it into property, because that's what I was told. So that property now becomes a battery, right? Because it's storing that energy.
Very good.
Now,
Yep.
you've done that thing, which is the absolute right thing to do. Except 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, 40 years down the line, they've taken that battery that had a capacity of this much and just gone, oh no, the capacity is now this much. But you've still only got this much of it filled. So now the energy that you have is worth less as a percentage of the overall battery size. That's the problem with all of these other assets. Governments can control how much of that asset is made. Governments control how much of that asset is bought. That's with gold, real estate, silver, everything, equities, everything. If I want to incentivize a stock market boom, all I've got to do is create a tax incentive. And I can inspire a stock market boom, right? Or a new company formation boom. If I want to incentivize real estate being built, all I've got to do is issue more permits. Or if I want real estate to be stop being built, all I've got to do is take away permits. Or I've got to do what they're doing right now, which is increase the interest rates. So now people don't want to buy as much property, so less will be built. Everything is completely in the control of the central planning authority. Everyone thinks only China is doing central planning, right? It doesn't work like that. Your tax incentives are the central planning mechanism that the governments use nowadays. Bitcoin is the only asset that humanity has ever experienced where the supply lever, there's two levers, demand and supply. In Bitcoin, the supply lever is jammed. It cannot move. No matter what happens to the demand lever, the supply lever is jammed. It's 21 million full issuance. That's it. It's the first time in human history where we have experienced an asset like this. Like, for example, when your mom was younger, when my dad was younger and he came over to the UK, he could buy 10 properties, right? Mm-hmm. I can grow up 30, 40 years later, still buy 10 properties. They might not be in the same area. They might not be the same type of property. I can still buy 10 properties.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is the first time in human history where my children growing up will never be able to buy 1 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoins. They will never, ever be able to do it outside of the miraculous. And so their choices 40 years in the future, my legacy's choices 40 years in the future are on my shoulders today. That's what responsibility is about. And that's what the fiat system incentivizes against. If we have that, we have a normal society. We don't have a society that's going crazy like it is nowadays. Because people have that responsibility on their shoulders. That responsibility has been shifted because of credit markets and government manipulation of the supply on assets. So that's why Bitcoin is important.
So what does it even mean to be you and get paid? Well, in short, it's embracing the opportunity available online to earn a living around your life and not the other way around. I'll give you a moment to let that sink in. Ready? In other words, to build your own dreams instead of someone else's. And for me, it took the sudden and unexpected loss of a very close family member back in 2013 before I took that kind of cliche statement seriously. It was a line in the sand moment where I decided I was going to do whatever I had to do to build something of my own to find freedom from the unfulfilling world of commuting and corporate slavery for good. And that decision put me on a completely different life path. And I can tell you from experience that it is even simpler to do today than it has ever been before. So if you've been inspired by anything you've heard on this podcast, nothing is stopping you from doing the same. When you learn to turn your existing skills, knowledge, passions, and interests into income streams online. And if you don't believe me, check out the episode number 18 with my long-term friend and mentor, Stuart Ross. And we're not talking about some half-assed part-time side hustle here, my friend. I am talking about drastically changing the way you think about and earn money in today's modern world. So sign up for Modern Wealthy, our 7-day fast start training series, which includes a downloadable ebook and your best life blueprint. And I will be there to cheer you on with monthly coaching calls and give you a bit of a kick up the bum. So head over to bugetpaid.com/launch. That's bugetpaid.com/launch. Well said. It's true. I've I'm trying to think of everything you just said there to unpack the bits that hit me most. But I think the legacy part, and I guess another way of saying that is time horizon. It's just that people don't, I think it's just, people are, the byproduct of everything you've just described is the vicious circle. People don't know where to start looking at this. And I sometimes struggle to know where to start explaining it. But the byproduct of that system is that everyone's living paycheck to paycheck with the head down. My neighbour, I keep referring to my neighbour in this story. This conversation I had with him recently. He's a plumber, his own business. He had 5 years left on his mortgage, or he sat down with his financial advisor and were reassured that by the time his kids started high school, he'd be mortgage free and could cut back his hours. Following COVID, they've sat down. He's now got 14 years, and it comes back to the energy thing. As far as I'm concerned, that's now just busted his plan to be at home more when his kids are at high school. So it's stolen his energy, as it were, from the future. Yep. But he said as well in that conversation, we stood for about 2 hours talking, and I wasn't trying to orange pill him, but I told him to start learning about Bitcoin. His attitude was, I don't have the time or I hate money. He kept saying, I hate money because I don't have the time to think about it. All it does is cause stress, and I'm working as hard as I can already. And I'm like, that right there is a perfect example of the average person, whether they've got their own business or not, and not realizing what the problem is. And because they're so resentful about the problem, they're not interested in studying the root cause. So it's like, how do we as Bitcoiners or people creating content or having conversations, like how do we really cut to the wake up when people just don't even have the headspace or energy to want to understand the root problem, but they're so unhappy and stressed with what that problem is causing?
It's difficult, which is why for me, I focus on people with a problem. Right? Like if you've got a £5 million property portfolio, I can actually show you why that property portfolio should actually be worth £9 million in order to make up for the amount of pounds that have been printed. I can show you that on a chart, right? Somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck. That's why I said rich people need Bitcoin more than poor people, but poor people need Bitcoin adoption more than rich people. Because what that person actually needs is his paycheck in Bitcoin, he needs a savings account in Bitcoin, or he needs, the Australian dollar covered by Bitcoin, right? And that way it's just working for him, or he's got an investment advisor that's putting his assets into Bitcoin and it's just working for him, which is why this ETF is very, very, very important.
So what I hear in you saying poor people need Bitcoin adoption, that's kind of what Jeff Booth talks about in Price of Tomorrow and this parallel system. I think what you mean by that is just people need to just completely opt out, right? It's adoption means people are actually using Bitcoin as money, which personally I think is probably further down the track, but it has to start at least with people seeing it as a store of value first and then eventually adopting it as money.
Yeah, I don't think that Bitcoin is, again, I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't think that Bitcoin ever gets used as the
medium of
majority medium of exchange in the entire world. Like I don't think 85% of the world transacts on Bitcoin. Maybe in 100 years, who knows?
That's
but
what I meant.
I don't. I don't know. I just can't see it, and I think it would be ineffective.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that?
I think that you need second and third level rails. So what I do like the idea of is if you had a third layer on top of Bitcoin that was the US dollar rail, right? Mm-hmm. And you had the US dollar on top of Bitcoin, that starts to make sense now. Something like that starts to make sense. But I don't think that Bitcoin is designed to be the base layer asset, and base layer assets move slowly. That's the point of them. That's why I don't really get involved too much in the conversation around Bitcoin's use as a instant transaction tool. Firstly, I think you're a moron if you're spending your Bitcoin. Like if someone convinced you to buy a fucking piece of art and hand over the scarcest asset humanity has ever created, and you're going to hand that over because you want to take part in the transaction, orgy, like I think that's a moron. The one thing people should be doing right now is holding on to their Bitcoin no matter what. Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain that? I try and go back to someone who isn't a Bitcoiner listening to this. So you just also said we need Bitcoin adoption. How does the adoption happen more broadly if people aren't willing to spend? And how do people that don't yet have it? How do people that don't yet have it acquire it if they can't buy it because there's none left to buy? How do people have got to sell something or work for it, right? Yeah.
So you said that the person that you were talking to, your neighbor, right? He was talking to his financial advisor, correct?
Yeah.
And what was he invested in?
It was just about his mortgage, how much they had left on their mortgage on the house they live in.
Right. Okay. Well, most people have financial advisors. Most people who work jobs have financial advisors, right? The problem with financial advisors is they've been equipped with very, very bad assets. So financial advisors have good intentions because they get paid. A lot of them are broke
as well.
Sure, but they get paid. They get paid by making you money, right? Yeah. But the fiat system has worked in a way where it's incentivized them to just keep searching for more people rather than serving the people that they have. Whereas if they had Bitcoin as a part of their offering, they could make money by making you more money, right? It now starts turning into sort of like insurance sales rather than financial advice. And so that is the way adoption happens without people knowing about it. Because do you know how many people know how treasury bills work?
No, I haven't got a clue.
Not that many. Not that many.
No.
Do you know that most people that have their money tied up in a 401k have treasury bills?
So that's the American version of like a superannuation or pension fund, right?
Yeah. So it's like, that's how adoption grows, right? Adoption grows because Larry Fink stands up, realizes he's been a moron for a while, and then says, we're going to apply, BlackRock is applying for a Bitcoin ETF. And now the army of salespeople for the iShares product that they have now turn into the salespeople for Bitcoin. And people like your neighbor goes to them and says, I have a bunch of money, what do I put it in? And they create a portfolio for them, and part of it's Bitcoin, and they don't even know about it. That's how adoption grows. I firmly think that the idea of Bitcoin awareness and the importance of Bitcoin awareness for Bitcoin adoption is about to go down. And I know that sounds crazy, but we're entering a new world now. Most assets are not bearer assets. Even your neighbor's property, while he has a mortgage on it, it's not a bearer instrument. Right?
So quickly, I've heard Jack Mallers say that a lot. The bearer instrument. How would you explain what a bearer instrument is? Because I mean, I certainly don't know how to explain that. I know kind of in context what he's saying. Explain.
That is a bearer instrument. That's a bearer instrument. That's a watch, right?
Yep.
That's a bearer instrument. I paid this watch retails for $12,000. I paid $26,000 for it. It's now worth roughly $60,000 to $75,000. That's a bearer instrument. Why? Because I have it. I'm in complete control of it.
So it's something you own.
Something you control.
Something you control. Okay.
Right. Something you control. That's a bearer instrument. And so
you are the
Bitcoin,
bearer of the instrument. I got it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's how bearer instruments work. No, not many assets are bearer instruments. Yeah. Not many big market cap assets are bearer instruments. Yeah. Most property is probably the only one that is a big asset that could be a bearer instrument, and yet every single year it gets more and more financialized as people take loans out against their property, right? And so most assets are not bearer instruments, and yet they're fully adopted, right? You don't go to a seminar on the idea of what is a property, right? You might go to a seminar on how do I make money from this, but you don't go to a seminar on what is the stock market, right? You're not doing that anymore. That is what will happen with Bitcoin, in my opinion.
So you think awareness will go down because there's institutions doing it for them, doing it for people.
Jack is
just
building.
What the stock market is.
Jack is building the perfect product to explain what I'm saying. Right?
Strike.
He is allowing you to look at your J.P. Morgan Chase account in the U.S. and look at your Barclays account in the U.K. and want to send a payment from JP Morgan in the US in dollars and want to credit it in pounds in my Barclays account in the UK. Cool, I press one button. That JP Morgan account gets debited, it gets converted to Bitcoin, gets sent over, gets converted again into pounds and credited into my account. That in the middle, the only reason people are excited about it right now is because it's new, right? JP Morgan does that every single fucking day for trillions of dollars, and no one thinks about it. That is where Bitcoin is headed. That is a $5 trillion a day market. That is what Jack is building for, and that is what eventually someone will acquire from him and will implement across the entire network, and it will become bigger than Visa, MasterCard, et cetera, et cetera. That's the power of it, and nobody will know.
Yeah, so you think, just going back to what you said about, you think awareness of Bitcoin, I keep coming back to that because it hit me, awareness of Bitcoin, i.e. people searching for what it is, people taking an interest to buy, will go down because they will become less important. Yeah. Because they can do it through the likes of what they're used to, right? The ways they've always invested, through their advisor, through JP Morgan, through an ETF, through index fund, for those who have been doing it already. And that will, for some reason, feel safer and more normal and less scary because it's, again, what they're used to in their head.
Not for some reason, it is.
Yeah.
It is. For the average person, it is. For someone who's tech savvy, someone who understands, the technical side of Bitcoin, that's people should take the opportunity, I believe, to actually bearer hold the first asset that is actually a bearer instrument, right? At mass scale. They should. But for most people, it's much easier to do the other thing. And I believe banks will create incentives for you to hold the ETF over the Bitcoin. Because if you want to borrow against your Bitcoin, which everyone likes to talk about since Saylor started talking about it, right? If you want to borrow against your Bitcoin, it's much safer for an institution like Goldman Sachs to give you a loan against your BlackRock Bitcoin ETF than your Bitcoin in your cold storage wallet.
So then we're just recreating the fiat system through these institutions if people don't hold the asset themselves. Is that what you're saying? Because these companies can just
We're not recreating it. I think Michael Saylor said this the best in a recent interview. Bitcoin will heal those financial systems. Financial systems aren't bad. Financial systems have created the rails for capitalism.
True.
The problem is that the rails themselves, the financial system itself has been corrupted. Bitcoin can heal that.
Yes.
When somebody goes in and this is the problem. So everyone says, there's a big hoopla, and I was a part of it as well, saying that institutions were going to come to Bitcoin and dump their balance sheet into Bitcoin. I'm sure you've heard that, right?
Oh, it's not so much now, but a lot of it's been talked about for years, waiting for the ETF. Yeah.
After I thought about it, I was like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I'll break it down why. If Apple was to take their treasury and their cash balances and put them into Bitcoin, because they said Bitcoin will give you a better return, right? As an Apple stock investor, it makes me go, oh, you've run out of ideas. Because the only reason I'm investing in Apple is for you to create products that will sell into the world to generate me profits. If all you're going to do is invest in Bitcoin, I can just sell my Apple stock, or you give me a damn dividend, and I can take that dividend and put it into the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. Why do I need to create 3 layers of risk extra on top of my investment? So that's why I think MicroStrategy is a very, very special moment. And I don't think it will happen again. I think it's a one and done, and I think Michael Saylor is a genius, and I think he has seen the light like nobody else had, and I don't think it will happen again.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand the stock market's intricate details or treasuries for businesses as much as I possibly should at this point. But going back to what you said, if we not dumb it down, but get into layman's terms.
Let me make it more simpler, right? Imagine you've got some cash. Imagine you've got some cash, right?
Yes.
And I tell you, hey, give me your cash. I'm going to work on a business opportunity. And you go, okay, cool. I trust him. I'm going to give him some cash to work on a business opportunity.
Yep.
And then you realize that what I'm doing, instead of working on the business opportunity, is just holding Bitcoin, but charging you a fee to do it and extra risk because I now control the Bitcoin. Yes. Wouldn't you just say, give me my damn money back? I can hold the Bitcoin myself?
Yes. So you're suggesting that it's the products and services is the important part, because that's proper capitalism without the crony involvement of governments debasing the money. Got it.
It's
And I think that's what
it's institutions, it's everything.
I think that's what with the stock market, a lot of people just don't. They'll either invest through an advisor who then invests in an ETF, and like you say, just adds their markup on it to do so when it's not necessary. It's far cheaper to just do it yourself on autopilot with an auto deposit from your bank or whatever, electronically through an ETF. I think what a lot of people don't actually think about as well, and you might be able to articulate this better than me, is that a light bulb moment I had with stocks is just when you look at and understanding what the term market cap meant, which was essentially how many shares multiplied by the price of the share is the market cap of the company, right? Mm-hmm. And then you look at some of the valuations of these market caps of Apple, and I don't know what theirs is at the moment, and it's like 10 years worth of revenue based on what they're generating right now. And I just thought, even without understanding anything more than that, that feels fundamentally a bit off, because they could screw up their next launch, or someone could find something out about the brand that destroys them. And this market cap is just this figure based on enough people believing in the thing. And a lot of people might say that about Bitcoin. It's like its value is only based on the number of people. It's not. Its value is based on supply and demand of it being a worthwhile thing.
Yeah, so the irrationality of Apple's market cap, I can understand it, but I don't agree with it. Right? I don't agree with your perspective. I don't agree with your perspective of it. Okay. What I say is that with the financial system that we've got, the fiat financial system that we've got, we incentivize a pursuit for growth over value.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of what I like to call value bros did really well over the last couple years, but now their day has come to an end and they can go back to bed for another 15 years. When you are in an environment where you are printing money at a rate that has never been seen before, you cannot rely on that money being printed to translate into value. You have to rely on growth. And so investors will always pursue growth. That's why the NASDAQ has outperformed the S&P and will continue to outperform the S&P over the next 20, 30 years, whatever it's going to be. You know, the S&P, when you look at it, it hasn't even broken. So one video that I have, which a lot of people get shocked by, is want to stay poor, buy stocks, real estate, and gold. Because when you value the S&P 500 in the amount of money that's been printed, not dollars, but the amount of money that's been printed, not in the price of it, right? What you realize is that the high in terms of value, because that's real value, right? Like, how many shares do I own compared to the amount of money that's been printed? And therefore, if a total amount of money that's been printed is $100 bills and I control 10 of them, I own 10% of the total money supply. That's real value, right? But what happens is that they'll say, right, we're going to increase the money supply by $900 more and increase it to 1,000 and give you 10 more. So now, instead of owning 10% of that money supply, you own $20 out of 1,000. So you own 2%.
Yeah. And that's probably the simplest explanation I've heard. Take away the stock market. I mean, at the end of the day, people are investing in the stock market or investing in anything because they know that simply holding the money they earn is not good enough.
They're relying on it.
That's what it all comes down to.
Right. They're relying.
They might not know why, but they know that.
They're relying on it to be a battery. Right? Like your choice as an individual is you work, earn currency, earn energy. You convert your physical energy into currency and then want to put that into a battery, right? Yeah. And that battery is being devalued. And by devaluing a battery, if for imagery terms, it's like if a battery has 100% capacity and you own 10% of that capacity and suddenly the battery's capacity doubles to 200%, you're fucked, right? And that's really that's really the problem that's going on. So most people don't realize is the S&P in terms of value is not even at its 2000 high, the tech bubble high. It's barely broken So forget the amount of dollars it's gone up by. In terms of value, it's not even past its 2008 high.
As a percentage of the money supply. Yes,
As
I
a
get what you're
percentage of the
saying.
money
Yeah.
supply. But in
Okay.
dollars, everyone looks like they're balling until inflation catches up to you.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I don't know every person in my audience, but I think a lot of people listening to this probably you would have lost them even at S&P, because I think just a lot of people aren't even in a position to keep investing at the moment beyond paying their mortgage. So they perhaps haven't even got to a point where they realise how that works. You know, the level of financial literacy beyond work, earn, pay mortgage, because then it will be clear by the time you're 60, if you live that long. You know, that's what I'm finding. And a lot of these conversations just lose people before they've even had chance to realise what the problem is. But essentially all you're saying is it comes down to money supply. If we're using something as money, its value is based on how much of it we have, not how much of it can be centrally inflated by a government who goes, oh, we need more, pump some more in. Which if you explain that in supply and demand of anything else, which is
Makes
why
sense.
I think you've talked about art before. It's like, it's if you've got a Mona Lisa, the Mona Lisa, there is one. That's why it's worth a fortune, or probably will never be sold. But people understand it with everything else except money itself.
Exactly. And you know what most people have been fooled into believing is that most people think inflation is the enemy. Inflation's not the enemy.
I know.
Debasement is the enemy, and that's what if anyone takes anything away from this, is understanding that inflation is not your enemy, because the inflation number is easily manipulatable. The debasement number isn't. Like, we literally printed this many dollars this year. You can't lie about that. Whereas I can lie and make you think that inflation is better or worse depending on how I want you to react.
Personally, just to tie that into your money supply conversation, and then we'll move on, is the fact that it's not that inflation's the enemy. I think it is. I think it's theft. I'm very much on the Robert Breedlove stealing your energy argument, because if money was sound, we wouldn't need inflation. I think the enemy is people's misunderstanding of inflation. And I have so many friends my age who have been doing everything right, like we said, investing, doing their best, spending all their spare time learning all this crap, which you shouldn't have to spend all your spare time doing. Their understanding of inflation is flawed, because it's the money supply that gets inflated. We don't need prices. Yeah, exactly. But it's overcomplicating it to call it inflation's over here and debasement's over here. They're the same freaking thing.
No, they're not. They're not though.
By virtue of inflating the money supply, it gets debased. I guess that's my understanding.
Well, inflation in economics throughout every education system is determined by prices, right? It's price inflation. That's how people understand inflation.
Yes.
Right? When you say inflation, they just think prices. So that's why I say debasement and inflation. You separate it so people go, oh shit, there's two of them.
I think just separating it adds a layer of complexity to me, or it did. I just didn't have any interest in learning more jargon than I needed to. Whereas if you just start with inflating the money supply, you've just created more of something, therefore it's less valuable. In real simple terms, because the minute you then get into the economics and the Ray Dalio stuff, it's like, I'm lost.
Well, if you want to get into the Ray Dalio stuff, you have to believe that China's the up-and-coming reigning superpower that's going to...
No, let's not go there. That's a bit scary. Let's switch gears quickly before we start wrapping up to your journey as a creator, as someone who... So you've discovered Bitcoin, you've discovered this thing that you're super passionate about, and you've made money, you're successful, and you've decided you're going to throw yourself into that brand, British Hodl. You'd already built a following, and then you unveiled your face, and it was all you were. A lot of people in Bitcoin are anonymous or using alternative names. But what did that look like? Like, how did you intentionally start building a following, or was it just as a result of starting to talk about it? When did you start, and how?
It was Clubhouse mainly to start with, and then Twitter. And then Twitter and Clubhouse. And I don't know, but if I had to guess, then I would say people were attracted to the idea of someone who was in traditional assets before.
Okay.
who is
Yep.
now come into Bitcoin and is able to have that conversation on that level rather than sitting in a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops talking about how we're going to change the entire world, right? Like, I think that the familiarity of my story for a lot of people made a lot of sense. And also, just admitting it's okay to admit that you want to get rich, which was my message when I first came in. It was like, you don't have to pretend to be a hippie. Like, you can say you want to get into Bitcoin to get rich so you can affect your message onto the world. That's okay. Because if you're not rich, you are not going to be able to affect your message onto the world.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. That's something that led me to rename my brand. I mean, I'd been doing a lot of affiliate marketing, and I did that because I wanted to make money. And I wanted to make money, not so much make exponential amounts, but I wanted to make it in a way that gave me freedom to move geographically and the freedom to scale it and the freedom of my time, which is essentially coming back to the energy conversation. That was why I started online. But the BU get paid piece for me
which is a great brand, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
well, it was going back to what you just said, though. What you just said was so spot on as far as I'm concerned with my brand. Is it's okay to admit you want more. It's okay to admit you want more, and that doesn't always look like more money, but money is going to help you get more of everything else. The one thing it cannot buy you is your health. But again, I've kind of said to everybody before, or anyone I speak to, it's like, challenge me on something money doesn't make better or easier. Because even if you've got terminal illness, you can certainly buy more comfort. You can buy, that. And
you can buy a better experience.
You can buy a better experience, which is what life's all about. When we are finite, we have limited time, and it's getting people to admit that. And I think you do it, and you do it very differently to me. But you mentioned your arrogance as a 16-year-old, or what you thought people would have thought of as arrogance. I can imagine you're not much different now than you were when you were 16, and that's rare.
Now I've got a little bit more finesse and probably a little bit more successes to rely on rather than just pure brute force arrogance. So
I don't
it's
see
like,
it as arrogance. I
I
know
feel
why
like
you think people would.
I feel like life is a journey of turning arrogance into confidence, right? In a weird way. Like that's what life is about. Like, life is about believing in yourself and what God put you on this earth for, and then spending your life proving that. That's what life is about.
Yeah. And whether it's God, the universe, whatever we call it, and that's a huge point as well. Like, whatever your God, your spirit, your universe, whatever you believe doesn't matter. Like, you are you. One thing we all have in common is being human, and one thing we all have in common is needing money. And that's what blows my mind with the Bitcoin community. They get that. Like, and it's the first community I've been in where people really can have divided views, divided opinions, and still sit down together and have amazing conversations, which is, I think, the thing I love about it most, because that's a core pillar of what I'm trying to achieve with BU Get Paid. On the BU side, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because we need all the voices, we need all the opinions, we need all the individuals, because that's what the world is made up of. And the get paid part is just actually question what money is. It's okay to want more of it. Understand why we have it in the first place, and stop just buying into the traditional BS conditioning that you've been told for so long, because that is why so many people are struggling or not getting ahead to where, with all the hard work in the world, they're not getting ahead.
But you know why that is with the Bitcoin community, right? Like, the difference, what I love about the Bitcoin community is that there is no asymmetry of information. All information is symmetrical. The only asymmetrical piece of information between you and I is the price at which we buy. Like, for example, that building behind me, right? Like, let's say we were both in property and we were both looking at buying that building. If I knew something about that building that would give me an advantage in negotiating that deal, I can't tell you about it, because now you have that advantage and now I no longer have that advantage. So I need to hide it from you. Whereas with Bitcoin, I can tell you all the advantages of that. The only differential factor that me and you will have is what price did we buy at. It's the only asset where all information is completely available at all times.
And transparent, yeah.
And transparent. It's the only asset, and that's magical. That's never ever happened in human history.
And every conversation I've had, it comes back to that being one of the value systems, right? It's, imagine if people were like that, if you could actually just see and verify who they were rather than having to trust what they say. You know, there's the verify, don't trust.
Bitcoin allows you to see, the best possible version of a human that I believe God put us on this earth to be, because it protects your value.
Yeah. Literally, as well as spiritually, physically, in all the ways. Oh, I love that. Let's finish on that, because that is such a great point. Actually, no, let's not finish on that. The last thing I try and incorporate, sometimes we have this conversation, then it goes on for another half an hour, but I'll finish with these two questions. So going back to, I don't know, maybe your 16-year-old self, but a younger version of you, what advice would you give him on being you and getting paid? So knowing yourself and knowing money. What would your two little nuggets of wisdom you would give a younger version of British Hodl?
I'd probably tell him that the cheat code is keeping the money, not making it.
Agreed.
Making it's very important, but the cheat code is actually like keeping it.
Knowing what to do with it, yeah.
And now everyone has Bitcoin as a cheat code, right? Because up till now, you would go work, you would go sacrifice your energy, you'd go sacrifice your time away from your family, your children, your husband, your wife, and you would go put yourself at risk in your career, you would increase your stress, you'd do all this other stuff. Now you're earning money finally, and now you need to save up in order to buy a house, right? Let's say you got to save up to buy a deposit, to put a deposit down on a house. Well, you save up to put a deposit down on a house. By the time you save up for it, the value of the house has gone up and the value of the deposit has gone down, right? With Bitcoin, it's the first time that a multi-billionaire or a person sweeping the streets can buy the exact same asset with maybe 1% of a difference in acquisition cost, right? Yeah. Whereas if I want to buy gold, like let's say I want to buy gold right now, a multi-billionaire is going to get a much better price than me, because he's going to buy a larger quantity, therefore they need to melt it down less, therefore he gets the economies of scale on that. And I am going to get a much better price than the street sweeper. The street sweeper is going to hand over $50 and get back $25 worth of actual gold, which means for the street sweeper, the gold actually has to increase in value by 100% for them to just break even on the gold. So gold is a terrible savings tool for the poor, right? Yeah. Bitcoin, we're all going to buy it, and the multi-billionaire might get a cost of acquisition of 1.5%. I might get a cost of acquisition of 2%, and a street sweeper might get a cost of acquisition of 3%. That's the first time ever that's happened. So you can actually use the Bitcoin cheat code and understand that protecting your value is easier than ever. So it's about keeping the money, not about making it.
And when you say keeping the money, are you talking about the physical custodying of it that we talk about, holding it yourself, or are you're just talking about the price of acquisition?
I'm just talking about not blowing it on stupid shit. I'm talking about not taking trips to Monaco every single month like I was doing like an idiot, like doing silly shit like that. And the only reason you do that is because the fiat system incentivizes you to do that. You're not gonna. Sorry, after you.
No. I was just going to jump in at that point because I was hoping you were going. Go back, please carry on afterwards. But I just wanted to jump in because you've answered the money piece, the get paid piece, and what you were about to say is evidence to me of why it's so important to have the BU piece, because we do spend all our money on stupid shit when we're younger because we haven't figured ourselves out.
Right. Absolutely.
So what would you say to yourself about that? What would you say about figure out who you are? Like, what in that bucket of advice? What would you say?
I would say if you're going to get some vices, make them vices that go up in value. Like, I like watches. I don't like cars. Okay. I've never been a car guy, right? I like watches. Yeah. So if I'm going to if I'm going to go and, if I've got 30 grand in the bank and I'm starting a business, it makes complete sense for me to say, okay, I'm going to put 10 grand of that into a Rolex. Because
Okay.
believe it or not, whether anyone wants to believe it or not, that Rolex is going to help you close more business deals.
That's
Just is.
fair. Yep. No, I agree.
So,
I guess
so
it was more. Go on. Sorry.
yeah, and to me, all of these things are savings tools, right? Like, so all of my advice. Listen, to say that someone who is a young person making a bunch of money isn't gonna go spunk some of it up the wall, it's just unrealistic. You are.
Yep.
You just are, right? So you just got to
Yep.
be smart about how you do it. Just like, I mean, I was
I
being
see what you mean.
crazy ridiculous how I was doing it. There was a time where a mentor of mine rang me because I sent him a picture of me pouring a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne off the balcony of the Fairmont Hotel in Monaco 2 hours before a flight home. And he said, when you get back, go take a shower and come and see me. Right, like that was it. That was the voice note that was the phone call that came through. So
Yeah.
avoid doing it like that. But to say avoid taking trips to expand your
Yeah.
mind to that's unrealistic, and I think people should live life. At the end of the day, I always say on Twitter every now and then, like, yeah, there's 21 million Bitcoin, but you've got one life. So your life is much rarer than any Bitcoin or any property or any stocks or anything that you could do. You have to live it.
There you go. And that is where we'll wrap up. Except I have to know what he said to you when you got back. When he said, take a shower and come and see me. What did he say?
It was a bollocking that I will not repeat, but
I figured it would be. How dare you
yeah.
pour Dom Perignon over the balcony, you absolute tool.
Yeah, he basically, in essence, he basically told me if I ever did that again, I could lose his number.
So what do you think he was trying to say? Like, have a bit more respect for money?
Yeah, he's like, you
Yeah.
need to have respect for money. You need to have respect for the opportunity you have at under 20 years old for doing what
Yeah.
you're doing, while other people are doing what they're doing. You have money, therefore it means you have responsibility. And that's where, my life has gone. It's like, I understand I have a responsibility because I have resources. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Most people don't think like that nowadays because the system incentivizes you to make money and then be irresponsible because irresponsibility is cool. Bitcoin finally makes responsibility cool. And that's what it's about.
There you go. Right. So the key takeaways I'm taking from this. Open your mind. Stop thinking the way everybody else is. That was one of the first things you said. Be responsible. And Bitcoin teaches you that. Bitcoin teaches us everything. I think we're summarizing with here. Have respect for the money.
You asked me for two things that I would tell my 18-year-old self. Like,
let's have it.
The other thing is not money related. It is
great.
I don't know how this is gonna sound, but this is exactly what I would tell my younger self. Mm-hmm. Believe that something put you here for a reason, because it's easy to fall into the trap of I don't believe in anything and I don't know what I'm here for. But if you just have that initial little candle of something put me here. I was reading a study and it said that any human being, there is an average 1 in 400 trillion chance of you being born as you. You being born as Amy, that's a 1 in 400 trillion chance.
Yeah.
So something did that. Whether you want to believe it's God, whether you want to believe it's the universe, whatever you want to believe, something did that. Mm-hmm. And I think having a knowing in the fact that something did that and you should be grateful for that would probably have put me earlier on a better path than it did.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I've heard that Gary Vaynerchuk talk about that a lot, and unfortunately, once we are in human form with thoughts and minds and brains that are going too quick for our own bodies, I think we just get in our own way.
Well, it's also the people around us. It's also the people around you, right? Like I just put a video out today, and it was about how many people around you. Do you know how many people have told me that I was wrong about doing something that I was doing to improve not only my life, but their life. Like people telling me that I'm wrong for investing in real estate or getting involved in stocks or Bitcoin. The amount of people I've had to fight against to tell them that I'm right is huge. And so many people are suffering in complete silence with nobody around them believing in them. That's huge. You have to have that belief. You have to have a group of people around you. You have to have a mastermind around you. You have to have a gang of people around you that not only, I'm not saying are yes men, that's not what I'm talking about, that believe in you. That believe in you, that allow you to have conversations that might stretch, the fabric of most people's ability to think so that you can actually grow as a person. That's very, very important.
Yeah. Amen. We really will wrap it up there. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Where can people find you? No, you're more than welcome. Been great to connect. Where can people find you?
Listen, it's very simple. Go to YouTube and in the search bar, type in British Hodl and look for this mug, and you will you'll find me.
Awesome. And I'll link up you've got a book, haven't you? You've got an email list if people want to connect with you, read your book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the book's not out yet, but I did do a training, and I recorded this training, right? And it's called the $5 million Bitcoin, because that's where I think Bitcoin starts at. And I recorded this training basically for somebody like my parents. It's basically the same training that I put my parents through, and it's completely free.
To my mum.
Yeah, it's completely free, and if you go to any of my YouTube videos in the description, the link to the free training is there.
Awesome. I will link it up. Thank you so much again. We
Very
will
welcome.
talk and tweet soon.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Hello, my friend. As someone who is not the best at finishing the things they start, thank you so much for making it to the end of this podcast. I hope you found it helpful. Maybe it piqued your curiosity on something new, or even just made you smile for a few seconds. If any of those things apply here, then all my regular tech challenges and tantrums are well worth it to get this to you. If you heard anything at all that you think could help just even one other human being, there's a couple of things you can do that I would really and truly appreciate. Firstly, you can follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. On most podcast platforms, this is usually just a case of hitting a follow button or a plus sign on the main show page. This means you'll never miss an episode, which is hopefully a win-win for us both. Secondly, if you're feeling really generous, you can leave me a 5-star rating or review wherever you're listening. And lastly, feel free to share an episode with a friend on social media with any thoughts, feedback, suggestions, or even criticism. It's okay, I can take it. Just tag me using the handle @AmyTaylorSays to make sure I see it and can thank you personally. Any or all of these things genuinely mean more human beings see and hear these conversations. So again, thank you for being here and helping me with my mission with Be You Get Paid to help as many people as possible know themselves, know money, and be happy. See you next time.